The concept of the matrix, the idea that our reality may not be what it seems. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Andrew, I've always been fascinated by the idea of simulation theory. The notion that we're living in a computer-generated world, much like in the movie The Matrix. I think it's a possibility, although we don't have any concrete proof yet. However, even if we are not living in a matrix, there are still plenty of limitations that we need to break free from.
How do you think we can escape the limitations of our reality, whether it's a matrix or not?
I think the key is to expand our consciousness, to increase our understanding of the universe and our place in it. We need to push the boundaries of what we know, what we can do. That's why I'm so passionate about space exploration, because it's the ultimate frontier.
I agree, space is the final frontier. But what about those who can't afford to travel to space or who may not be interested in it? How can they expand their consciousness and break free from limitations?
Well, there are many ways to do that. One is through education and learning. We need to constantly challenge ourselves and seek knowledge. Another way is through creativity and innovation. We need to think outside the box and come up with new ideas and solutions to problems. And finally, we need to cultivate a sense of purpose and meaning in our lives. You need to find something that inspires us and gives us a reason to get up in the morning.
That's great advice, Elon. But what about those of us who feel stuck in our current situation, whether it's a dead-end job, a toxic relationship, or a difficult family situation? How can we break free from that?
That's a tough question, Andrew. But I believe that we always have a choice. We can choose to stay where we are and accept our situation, or we can choose to take action and make a change. It may not be easy, and it may require sacrifices, but ultimately, it's worth it. We have to remember that we are in control of our own lives, and we have the power to create the reality we want.
So, Elon, you've achieved incredible success in multiple industries. What would you say are the most important traits someone needs to have in order to become a top G in their field?
I think the most important trait is relentless perseverance. You need to have an insane level of drive and passion for what you're doing. It's not enough to just be smart or talented. You need to be willing to work harder than anyone else and to keep pushing through obstacles, no matter how difficult they may seem.
That's great advice. But how do you maintain that level of perseverance in the face of setbacks and failures?
You have to be able to embrace failure. Failure is inevitable. It's when you're trying to do something new and challenging. But instead of being discouraged by it, you have to see it as an opportunity to learn and grow. You have to be willing to take risks and make mistakes and then use those experiences to improve and get better.
That's definitely a mindset that's easier said than done. How do you cultivate that kind of resilience?
It's not something that happens overnight. It takes practice and discipline. One thing that helps me is to focus on the bigger picture. When you have a clear vision of what you're trying to achieve, it makes it easier to keep going even when things get tough.
That's great advice. Now, I know a lot of people out there are trying to break into the tech industry. What advice do you have for someone who wants to become a top G in that field?
The tech industry is constantly evolving, so be willing to learn and adapt. You have to be curious and always looking for ways to improve and innovate.
That's great advice. Now, I know a lot of people look up to you as a role model. Who are some of the people you look up to?
There are a lot of people who inspire me, but I would say some of the biggest influences in my life have been my parents. They instilled in me a love of learning and a sense of curiosity from a young age. And they always encouraged me to pursue my passions, no matter how conventional they may seem.
It's an honor to have you on the show, Elon. Now, as you know, the Sigma male is a concept that has gained a lot of popularity in recent years. It's often described as the lone wolf, the outsider, the rebel who doesn't follow the rules of society. You've been called a lot of things over the years, Elon, but would you consider yourself a Sigma male?
I'm not really sure what that means, Andrew, but I've always believed in doing things differently and not following the crowd. So for that description.
That's exactly what Sigma male is all about. Now, a lot of people might look at you and think that you're a genius who was born with an innate talent for technology and entrepreneurship, but I know that's not entirely true. You've talked before about how you taught yourself how to code and how you learned about rockets by reading books. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to learning and how that's contributed to your success?
I've always been a voracious reader, and I always had a deep curiosity about how things work. I think that's really important if you want to be an innovator or an entrepreneur. You have to be willing to constantly learn and challenge your own assumptions. And when you're working on something that's never been done before, you have to be willing to learn from your mistakes and keep trying until you get it right.
I think that's a really important point. So let's talk about some of the traits that are often associated with Sigma males. One of those traits is independence. Sigma males are often seen as self-reliant and able to succeed on their own. Would you say that independence has been important in your own life and career?
Absolutely. I've always been someone who has wanted to do things my own way, and that's been a big part of my success. But at the same time, I've also recognized the importance of working with other people and building a strong team. You can do everything on your own, and sometimes you need to rely on other people's expertise to achieve your goals.
There's been a lot of discussion in recent years about what it means to be a man in today's society and how traditional masculine traits and values are being challenged. As someone who's achieved so much success in fields traditionally associated with masculinity, I'm interested in your thoughts on this subject.
Sure. I'll be happy to discuss it.
Great. So let's start with a broad question. In your opinion, what does it mean to be a man in the 21st century?
Well, I think being a man today is different from what it was in the past. Traditionally, masculinity has been associated with things like physical strength, competitiveness, and dominance. All those traits are still valued in some contexts. I think there's growing recognition that they're not the only or even the most important aspects of being a man. In my view, a man today means being able to adapt a rapidly changing world, being able to think critically, and being able to take responsibility for one's actions.
That's a really interesting perspective. I think a lot of people would agree with you that traditional notions of masculinity are becoming outdated. But there are also some who feel that there's a backlash against masculinity, and that men are being told they need to be more like women in order to be successful in today's society. What's your take on that?
I think that's a false dichotomy. It's not about being more like women or less like men. It's about recognizing that there are a wide range of traits and skills that are valuable in today's world, regardless of gender. For example, empathy and emotional intelligence are traits that have traditionally been associated with women, but they're also important qualities for leaders in any field. On the other hand, physical strength and competitiveness are still valued in certain contexts, like sports or the military. So I don't think it's a matter of a set of traits being better or worse than other. This is about being able to recognize the value of different traits and skills and being able to develop them in yourself.
That's a really balanced perspective, and I think it's important to recognize that there's no one-size-fits-all answer to this question. But let's talk specifically about your own experience. You've achieved a lot of success in fields that are traditionally associated with masculinity, like engineering and entrepreneurship. Do you think that being a man has given you an advantage in these fields?
I think there's no denying that men have historically had an advantage in many fields simply because of the way our society is structured. But I also think that the world is changing, and we're starting to see more women breaking through in traditionally male-dominated fields. So while being a man may have given me certain advantages, I don't think it's the only or even the most important factor in my success. Ultimately, I think what's most important is a combination of hard work, talent, and a willingness to take risks.
So, Elon, what are your thoughts on Andrew Tate? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I think Andrew Tate is a very interesting person, and I respect his work ethic and his drive to succeed. However, I think that some of his views and actions are misguided and not aligned with what I believe in.
Can you give me an example?
Well, for one, I agree with his views on women. I believe in equality for people, regardless of gender, race, or any other factor. And I think that Andrew's views on women can be harmful, but limiting.
Elon, you're one of the richest people on the planet, but why do you think so many people struggle to achieve financial success?
Well, Andrew, there are many reasons why people aren't rich, but I think the main reason is that they don't take risks. They don't take chances on themselves, on their ideas, on their dreams. They play it safe, and as a result, they never achieve the success they desire.
So, you believe that taking risks is essential for success?
Absolutely. If you want to achieve something great, you have to take risks. You have to be willing to fail, to make mistakes, and to learn from them. You have to have the courage to follow your vision, even when everyone else thinks you're crazy.
That's a great point, Elon. But what about people who say they don't have the resources or the opportunities to take risks?
I understand that not everyone has the same resources or opportunities, but that shouldn't stop them from trying. There are countless examples of people who started with nothing and became successful through hard work, determination, and perseverance. You don't need a lot of money to start a business or pursue a dream. What you need is the willingness to take action and the courage to face challenges.
That's true, but what about people who are afraid of failure? How can they overcome that fear and take risks?
Fear of failure is natural, Andrew, but you can let it hold you back. You have to embrace failure as a part of the process. Every successful person has failed at some point in their life. What separates them from others is that they didn't give up. They learned from their failures, adjusted their approach, and kept moving forward. That's the mindset you need to adopt if you want to be successful.
That's great advice, Elon. But what about people who have tried and failed many times? How do they keep going?
Persistence is key, Andrew. You have to keep trying, keep learning, keep improving. If something doesn't work, try something else. Don't give up. The road to success is rarely a straight line. It's full of twists and turns, setbacks, and obstacles. But if you keep moving forward, you will eventually get there.
Elon, can you tell us about your experience of starting a business for cheap?
The first step in starting a business for cheap is to focus on solving a real problem. Find a problem that you're passionate about solving, and then build a product or service that solves a problem better than anyone else.
That's a great point. What's your process for identifying those problems?
For me, it's about being curious and asking a lot of questions. I read a lot, and I know a lot of people from different industries. I try to understand what problems people are facing, and then I look for ways to solve those problems using technology.
That's a great approach. What's your advice for entrepreneurs who don't have a lot of capital to start with?
One of the best ways to start a business for cheap is to leverage existing resources. For example, you can use open source software, cloud computing, and other online tools to reduce your costs. You can also look for ways to partner with other businesses or individuals who can help you with resources, expertise, or funding.
That's a great point. How important is it to have a business plan?
A business plan is essential, but it doesn't have to be a long, complicated document. You need to have a clear vision of what you want to achieve and a plan for how you're going to get there. Your plan should include your target market, your product or service, your revenue model, and your marketing strategy. It's also important to be flexible and adjust your plan as you learn and grow.
How do you manage your time as a busy entrepreneur?
Time management is essential. And I use a lot of tools to help me stay organized and focused. I use a calendar to schedule my time, and I use productivity apps to help me stay on task. It's also important to prioritize and delegate tasks to others so that you can focus on the things that matter most.
What's your advice for entrepreneurs who are struggling to stay motivated?
Motivation is key, and it's important to find inspiration and motivation from different sources. For me, it's about being passionate about what I'm doing and having clear purpose. It's also important to surround yourself with people who support you, who believe in what you're doing.
You've made billions of dollars through your companies. What's your secret to making easy money?
Well, Andrew, I wouldn't say it's easy. It takes a lot of hard work, dedication, and a willingness to take risks.
Well, let's move on to some of your projects. You've been working on some incredible things like sending humans to Mars and creating electric cars. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to pursue these projects?
Sure. I've always been interested in space and technologies, and I always wanted to make a positive impact on the world. I think that by making humanity a multiplanetary species, we can ensure our survival in the long term, and by transitioning to sustainable energy, we can reduce our impact on the environment and a better future for generations to come.
That's really inspiring. So what's next for you and your companies?
Well, we're continuing to work on our Mars missions and our sustainable energy initiatives. And we're also working on some exciting new projects in the field of AI and neuroscience. We believe that by creating advanced AI and brain-computer interfaces, we can enhance human intelligence and unlock new possibilities for human creativity and productivity.
Wow, that's amazing. It sounds like you're really pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Well, we're almost out of time, but before we go, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yes, I just want to say that I believe in the power of human innovation and creativity. And I think that by working together and pursuing bold new ideas, we can create a better future for ourselves and for the world. Thank you for having me on the show, Andrew.
Thank you, Elon. It was great having you here.